Welcome back. I'm Mark Small. I'm co-host with Paul Ogden for this show, Civil Discourse Now. We're coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, the Broad Ripple section. It's on the north side of Indianapolis. If you're watching this from someplace like Tierra del Fuego, where you're about to get on a ship to go to Antarctica, or if you're on the International Space Station, we're located in Indianapolis, Indiana on the north side at 6510 Cornell Avenue. We're coming to you from Big Hat Books. Excellent selection of books in the store here. They also have space here that you can rent for all occasions.
Hey Mark, do you have a book that's being sold here?
Odd that you would make a point of that.
It is odd.
I wrote a book called Crime Pays. It's a fictionalized account of a Ponzi scheme in the 1960s. We're going to be doing a show on it here in a couple of weeks.
Your modesty is astounding.
I know. I really don't like to talk about it very much. Our guest is Dave Lumley. We're talking about economics, different aspects of the economy. Dave is a chartered financial analyst and a certified financial planner affiliated with Raymond James. And we were talking about education before we broke about in Germany.
Again, I'm not an expert on this, but they have access to education at all levels, and depending on how well you do at the elementary level, then you are siphoned off into essentially 3 different areas, and they educate you. And if you want to go to the university, ultimately you take that route, and that is largely free to German students. So you don't have. I mean, I've gotten in conversations with people here very recently. These were people in their 20s, 2 in particular, and I asked them basically as a first question, how much student loan debt do you have? One of them was a student down at IUPUI and had accumulated about $40,000 in debt. The other one had completed a degree in architectural design and was going back to school to study nursing, and at the end of her nursing degree she will have accumulated $70,000 in debt. So that's the equivalent of a small mortgage. I won't say it's like being a dung beetle, but right. You know, you leave school with debt that you already have to pay.
And that's one thing we've talked about on this show, where law students in particular go to private schools, go to Valparaiso, Notre Dame in Indiana, could end up with 6-figure debt and find themselves not able to get a job that can at least pay that debt back. Mark made a point earlier that I want to respond to. Mark, of course, being the left-wing radical on the show, and not reasonable, like I think a viewer once said recently.
No, like me. They describe you as being level-headed.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Anyway, Mark takes a position we need to subsidize education throughout the entire K through 12, not only K through 12, but college, subsidize post-college education. My experience when I went to college, my experience teaching at the university levels, people who paid for their education out of their own pocket, whether they be a loan that they're taking that they ultimately have to pay back, or whether they're working during school to pay for their education. Those tend to be the more serious students. The people you see screw around are the people who have someone else paying for their education.
I don't know that you can generalize completely, but I'd say that you're on the right track, that the older, more mature student is the one that does take it seriously. Not all people who go to college and have their parents pay for it are bums, louts.
No.
Okay. Well, okay, but first of all, if you're going to generalize, you are doing it completely. I mean, that's the nature of generalization.
All right, fine.
But also, just because people screw around in college, I mean, everybody screws around in college. 99%, that's the 99%. 99% of people who go to college at one time or another screw around partying on Saturday night, Friday night, whatever. It's a time you're going to have stresses, you're going to have fun things you do too. But I'm talking about people who just go for like 1 or 2 semesters, straight out, flunk out, don't really care that much about school.
Is it still the case where they sit you down in a large lecture hall and say, look to the left, look to the right, the person sitting next to you won't be there in 2 years?
You talking about law school?
No, I'm trying, they did that at Purdue University in a chemistry class.
I don't know what they did on the first day of classes at DePaul because I bagged classes. That was, frankly, that was my freshman year. But I graduated, and yeah.
Barely.
No, there's no barely. I graduated. I have a diploma on my wall, the same as, the same value as Danny Quayle's diploma or Vernon Jordan's, both DePaul alums. But the point is, this is a system, you're wanting to compare people's performance under the pressures or the risks of losing the means of financing their education in a system that's largely privatized or stressing privatization, ours. Whereas if you have an educational system in which the individual receives a really good education and is encouraged to go on and it doesn't cost them anything and they're looking at a bright future and it's a different attitude towards education, then they're not going to just screw off because the government's paying my way to be in school.
Well, one thing that we're not looking at that I think we need to look at is these tuition has been going up far above the inflation rate. The cost of college, the cost of university. People are looking at how do you pay for this. I want to look at cost control. Why are the costs going up that high? You go to these colleges and universities, you see these lavish facilities anymore.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, it's
like
phenomenal.
a 4-year vacation.
Well, first of all, I graduated from DePaul. We always are the most expensive school in the state of Indiana. And we have really good facilities. They're really neat programs for students. They have an excellent visual school, journalism school. They pay their professors quite well. The costs, I don't know what else to say about the costs there. They're always building something new that's shiny and bright, and they've got excellent facilities. But we will always be the most expensive school in this state. There are alumni there, I think, who are damn determined to make sure that we are the most expensive. But here's the thing. DePaul also has like the largest endowment of any school in the state except Notre Dame. And the way I understand how the accounting works, we have a really high tuition. And the endowment is sitting over here, and it's in trust. And if you give a scholarship to a student, then that money goes from the interest off the endowment, however they secure profits off that endowment, they fund scholarships. And so the scholarships pay the tuition and the expenses of the university. So they might have, I don't know, $40,000 tuition this year. But if it's paid out of the endowment and a lot of the students there receive scholarships, then that's really a fictional sum. I mean, they're just kind of moving money from one column to the other in order to make sure that we're number one in the state as far as most expensive schools. Because there are alums that will send their kids there, period, and there are people that will send their kids there, period.
One of the problems with Indiana, and I'm looking more at state education, you're looking more at private, I'm looking at more public colleges, universities. We do not have a system, I forgot the name, community college system in Indiana. Historically, what has happened is IU and Purdue has gone to the legislature and they've said, we don't need community colleges, we will set up satellite campuses and take care of it themselves. The trouble is those satellite campuses do not have lower tuition. They have the same tuition rates as the main campuses.
I heard a member of the John Purdue Club, who was a big alum at Purdue, big backer. He told me one time that campus down there in Indianapolis will never be independent. IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis, is the third largest campus in the state of Indiana. It would make more sense for it to be independent than any other campus in the state. But he said to me that will never be independent of us because we will never want competition from another school. Bloomington and Purdue control the schools in the state. And so you'll have satellite campuses in Hammond. I mean, that's where Purdue campus is located.
There's an IU campus in Kokomo.
There's an IU campus in South Bend.
Right.
There's an IU Purdue campus in Fort Wayne. They're actually a Division I basketball school. There are all these campuses that should be independent, so, and that's not just for identity, but that's so that they can lobby the legislature and get their resources instead of having to go through the home entity or the main entity in Bloomington or West Lafayette.
And we don't have enough competition for education in the state because we have IU Purdue dominating the state college system.
Yeah, and that's not meaning to neglect Indiana State or Ball State or University of Southern Indiana. I mean, or Vincennes, which is a junior college. But those are the two dominant university entities in the state in terms of public dollars, whereas other states have multiple entities, and so they can lobby the legislature and the political leaders in their state. And that's a game that shouldn't be played. That should not be something that's relevant. I mean, we should be concerned with those students getting the best education possible. Let's go to something you were wanting to address.
I wanted to talk about inflation. I go to the grocery store, buy my own groceries, cook at home, even though I am a bachelor. But I find that every time I go to the store, the prices have been going up lately. And the last year, I would say they've just been. A can of Pringles chips was $1.45. Now it's like $1.85. It just keeps going up. What about inflation? Is inflation a problem?
Well, if you buy food,
Most
if you
of
put
them
gas
do.
in your car, if you have to pay health insurance premiums, if you have to send your child to college, there's inflation. Now the CPI, net of energy and
That's Consumer
What am I
Product
thinking?
Product
Yes.
Index.
Exactly. The CPI is basically telling you, net of food and energy, that we do not have an inflation problem. I would disagree with that. And those items that I just mentioned all have gone up rather significantly in price in the last year or so. And in my opinion, there is inflation, any way that you look at it.
But my understanding was that, raised as I was in a rather right-wing household, that wages of workers drive up costs. That was what was the cause of inflation in the 60s and the 70s, and that suddenly wages got capped because Ronald Reagan came into office and sun shone over the land once again.
It's true.
And the air traffic controllers union, PATCO, was killed, and suddenly we didn't have a problem with inflation anymore. Is that an invalid assessment of why we had?
I'd say it's oversimplified, more so than anything else.
Not unusual for Mark.
Okay.
He's giving me this glare.
That's all right.
Sir,
It's-
I might need security after this.
You have essentially cost push and demand pull inflation. And for something like medical services, as the population ages, there is more of a demand for medical services, medical equipment, diagnostic equipment, name other medical services.
Sure.
And so consequently, there's a higher demand for those services, so the cost of those, so the prices of those services go up.
But on a lot of other services, the wages of the people who make the goods or provide the things have gone down.
That's correct. There is, here in the United States, the wages of workers are pitted against those in specifically workers in Southeast Asia, not so much in China anymore, because the wages in China are going up rather quickly, and ultimately what happens over time is that wages for doing roughly the same work netted out against inflation and fluctuations in foreign currencies tend to equalize out over very long periods of time. More simplistically, though, a cheeseburger in West Germany is going to cost about as much as a cheeseburger in Detroit or a cheeseburger somewhere in Bangkok.
Okay. Then,
And what's actually happening is wages in Southeast Asian nations are rising, albeit from very low levels, and
we're at the end of the
wages.
Sorry.
Wages.
We'll be right back.
Okay, very good.